Peace, peace, peace.
All right, let's get this started. All right, we're gonna wait a couple of minutes. Wait for my guests to arrive. Get my notes. Peace, 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 my brother. How you doing?
Peace, peace. I'm good. Alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really, really good.
Okay, great,
Got
great.
a lot planned for today.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So let me just start off by saying thank you for taking some time out your schedule. I know you had a lot going on. You just moved, just starting a new adventure, your employment. So thank you for taking the time to conversate with me for a few minutes, my brother.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
All right. So the first thing I want to say to everybody is that this is something that I do called Mindful Morning. Done 5 of these so far, where essentially what I do is I talk about spirituality in the modern world and how we feel spirituality can benefit people in general. How it can uplift people, especially in these times where everybody's going through COVID and there's fear and terror everywhere. So I want to find out exactly how the spiritual path that different people follow all over the world can empower people and help people in these times.
Mhm.
So first of all, I want to begin. What do you want me to refer to you as? I know on your Instagram you're Sufi Alchemy.
Yeah, exactly. My name is Tali Bah.
Talib.
Yes, and last
Taliba?
name Bah. I actually
Okay.
started with the name Tali Bah, but I later changed it to Sufi Alchemy. So my Quora is still with Tali Bah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So Talib, you're a Sufi, correct?
Yeah. You can say that. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got you. Now, over here in the Western world, I think that there's been a lot of misconceptions about Sufi and Sufism and what it means. And I think that one of the terms that's used often, people will say that Sufism is mystical Islam, but I think that term can be a little ambiguous. So, can you break down what Sufism is in a way that we in the Western world can get it and understand? Because we sometimes are ignorant of these things.
Alhamdulillah. It's a good question. So the Arabic word would be tasawwuf, and that is translated to Sufism. But what if we use tasawwuf? What it means is essentially is the inner teaching of Islam.
Hmm.
Is because the way of Islam, not many people know this, but you actually have three levels, and this is by the most important saying of Prophet Muhammad, Hadith Jibril. It has Islam, Iman, Ihsan. So Islam is the outer level, that's the form, the ritual. You can say this simplified, the five pillars. Then you have Iman, which is maybe the most important, which is faith or true belief. Okay.
Hmm.
And then and that deals with believing in Allah, believing in angels, and so on. Then you
Hmm.
have ihsan, and ihsan is something that we don't talk about today, but ihsan is essentially the, you can say, it comes from beautifying or spiritual excellence, just a completely inward dimension of
Right.
this way of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. So Sufism or Tasawwuf is the knowledge of ihsan, is the knowledge of the
Hmm.
final level of this way.
Got
Because we know about the study of law, the study of Sharia, and these kinds of things, how to pray, how to do the ablution, and so on. That's the outer teaching, but the completely inner teaching of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu is what was in the classical world studied as tasawwuf or Sufism.
Gotcha. Now, of course, my mind, Western mind, so forgive me if I'm wrong. I was raised as a Christian. I don't follow any religion now. I was raised as a Christian. So
Mhm,
what you're saying in my mind immediately got broke down in a Christian sense.
mhm,
In Christianity, you have like the lay people who understand the basic tenets of the Bible, and then you have like the pastors who understand a little bit deeper, and then you have individuals who might still believe in the Bible, but they might leave the church because they see things on a deeper level. Is that kind of sort of, or am I way off?
Yeah, you can say that. In Christian terms, you could likeness Sufism to Gnostics,
Gotcha.
which is and some of the teachings are almost the same. We even
Right.
call Marifa is translated as gnosis
Okay.
usually. So it's not that different from monks.
Right.
Renunciates. So and this is the problem with the word Sufism, because you essentially have two different things that you're talking. You're either talking about tasawwuf, which is the mysticism, the inner teaching, or you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about tariqa. Tariqa is Sufi order, or Sufi
Gotcha.
path. And then you have Naqshbandi, Qadiri, Tijani, Muridi, and so on. So when it comes to the Sufi path, that would be something similar to what you say, that there are few that turn inward,
Gotcha.
and yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, from the Sufi perspective, how would you find, or can you define, Allah, and what is annihilation?
That's a good question. So um, the path of the Sufi is to travel towards Allah, and Allah is, we cannot know God by the mind. There are
Hmm.
so many who have tried. So many who have tried. Can read metaphysical work after metaphysical work with
Hmm.
philosophers trying to define God and so on. But as a Sufi master, Nasdundun al-Misri said, he was one of the first Sufi alchemists. He said, whatever you can imagine God is beyond that. Allah is always beyond the mind. So there's this beyondness of Allah,
Hmm.
that is so beyond. So there's nothing that I can say to define God, or something like this. We would say that the way you can reach Allah is by experiencing Allah.
Right.
So you can't fathom Allah with the mind, because Allahu Akbar, God is beyond whatever you can imagine, but you can
Hmm.
experience the divine within. So
Right.
this is the path of the Sufi, to reach this inner you can say enlightenment. We say Hadratullah, just coming into the presence of Allah.
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Now,
and
not to
that's
cut
the
you off.
same for other mysticals. Yes.
Not to cut you off. So for a lot of people, the idea of having a divine experience and coming into contact with God, a lot of times individuals will say, "I have this experience." They say, "Oh, that's blasphemy. Only the prophets can see God." But you're saying in Tasawwuf that all of us can have the experience of connecting with the
Yes.
divine, correct? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. You absolutely. And that's a good point that you bring up. And because this, if we talk about gnosis, there are levels to gnosis, right? So
Hmm.
everyone can feel some glimpse of the spirit within. They can have very deep experiences in life, right? uh, feel really joyful, even go to a church and feel, the Holy Spirit, and things like this. So these inner experiences, some go to India and they have these mystical experiences and so on. Others have them in other ways. So we get into contact with this spirit within, right? But there are
Hmm.
levels to this. There are levels to being in contact with the divine, if you will. So the one
Hmm.
that have the purest level would be a prophet. They have no individuality whatsoever. It's always sort of Allah or God that speaks through a prophet, like Jesus or Muhammad sallallahu.
Hmm.
So which is why their word becomes the word of God, because the self is just not there.
Right.
But
Right.
for normal people, we maybe meditate very deep. We go into a deep state, then we fall off and go into
Hmm.
ego mode, and so on. So
Right.
so there are levels to that.
Got you. So that state of being like the prophet, is that annihilation where the self is totally obliterated and there's nothing left but God. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, yes, yes. You can say it like this. We say fana, um, fana, the death of the self, or the annihilation of the self.
Got you.
Yes,
Now
and there are
that's
also levels to fana.
Okay. Okay. So is that kind of annihilation possible for everyone as well? You were saying that earlier that it's possible for everybody to have the divine inner experience. Is that level of fana possible for everyone too?
Yes, the Sufi would traditionally say on the Sufi path is possible, but not without a teacher, a
Right.
sheikh, or a
Gotcha.
spiritual guide,
Gotcha. Okay.
because there needs to be a path to reach there,
Hmm.
right? And this is essentially what tariqa means, is a path.
Gotcha. Okay. So why is it, and maybe this is a question that nobody can answer, why is it in the Western world we have this idea that you have Islam over here and Sufism or Tasawwuf over there? Why is it that it seems like there's a separation between the two
Yes.
when it's all one, right?
Yeah, it certainly is. This is a good question, and I think that it is a matter of it comes from communication, right? Because I'm familiar with some of the Sufi orders who have taught Sufism very much like Sufism in the West,
Hmm.
but they are speaking to an audience that might have a Christian background, and they are speaking in a language that is easy for them to understand. Now,
Right.
if you teach Sufism to a Muslim crowd, you speak in another way, because you have to relate to the people and their experience, right? So
Mhm.
I just think that there's this, therefore the misunderstanding. Some groups teach it in a certain way, and then maybe people from the traditional world look at that and say, no, this is not Islam. Uh, but then when you teach it in another way, people understand. But then there's also this there's also this sort of you don't always have good teachers of tasawwuf. You don't
Okay.
always have good teachers of Sufism. So
Mhm.
it's also the quality of the teacher. Maybe some teachers, they have some misunderstanding in the way
Right.
they present tasawwuf. uh, so that can lead to misunderstanding. And also one thing that is relevant also to know, that I might take up, is that a different tariqa will teach tasawwuf a little bit differently, because the path is not completely identical,
Right.
and the method is not completely identical.
Right.
So if a Naqshbandi sheikh, for example, says tasawwuf to you, they will define it in their way, and a Tijani will define it in the way of Sheikh Ahmed Tijani, and so on. So that's why it can vary. Uh,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. One thing I want to discuss with you, and I'll probably jump away all over the place because I'm fascinated by this. There's someone who I've been hearing about in Sufism, the famous Ibn Arabi.
mhm,
And he teaches that Allah, God, is the only reality, and everything else is just
mhm,
illusory, and it comes from the light of Allah.
mhm.
Nowadays, would that be considered something as blasphemous to say that we are projections of God? How do individuals who practice tasawwuf or people who practice Orthodox Islam, how do they see a view like that?
They mostly the people of the Sharia, or we say Ahlul Sharia, of form, they will reject this teaching of Wahdatul Wujud from Ibn Arabi.
Hmm.
Um, you know how the Sufi Tariqa traditionally have taught this. They don't teach that until you are on that level.
Okay.
The way that this tasawwuf have been taught in the traditional world is that the sheikh is going to see your level, and he's
Hmm.
going to give you knowledge that is very relevant for you and your level and your life, so that
Hmm.
you can apply it in the right way. So the sheikh will not go extremely deep then, or something that say something that you might misunderstand.
Right.
This
Right.
is actually a prophetic way. It has to do with the teaching of Malayani, and knowledge which is relevant to you if you can derive it from Hadith and so on. So they wouldn't go out with this kind of teaching to people who have not done a lot of work on themselves, because they
Right.
might start thinking that the ego is God. So
Right.
to the scholars who criticize Ibn Arabi, yeah, it's true, it's blasphemous if you look at it from the perspective of the ego. The self is not God.
Right.
Uh, but you know, um, there are levels to this. There cannot be two beings in existence
Right.
at the same time, who is then God. So we don't have this dualistic way of viewing it, that there are two beings in existence and I am separate from God, because Allah's will is always done. So
Hmm.
Allah is the one being that manifests in so many forms, and creates creation, where we are creation, which is ultimately just a manifestation of the divine.
Gotcha. Okay. And do Sufis strive to understand questions like why? Like why did God create anything when he
Yes.
is the only reality?
No, no, absolutely, absolutely, and the why is answered by the Hadith Qudsi, that Allah says, Hadith Qudsi is so in the holy canonical text, to someone who might be from another tradition. Christianity, you have Bible, Hinduism, or the Vedantic Dharma, you have the Vedas and Upanishads. In Islam, you have the Quran, which is the revelation. Then you have Hadiths, which is sayings of the prophets. So that is what we call sunnah, is the saying on behavior, how the prophet lived. So within hadiths, Prophet Muhammad wouldn't only say do this or do that, or behave in this. Also in hadiths, Prophet would sometimes narrate what Allah says, and that's what we call hadith Qudsi, is when Prophet, holy hadith, it means holy hadith, when Prophet says what Allah says. So in a hadith Qudsi, Allah says, I was a hidden treasure. I wanted to be known. So I created creation in order to be known. So there is this deep metaphysical, you can say cosmological, sort of the being wanting to know itself. So creation is a way to know itself.
Gotcha. So in a sense, do you feel that human beings have the same impulse? Because we have a creative impulse as well. And I know this as a person who I've been writing my whole life. I feel like as I write more and create more, I'm kind of learning more about myself. I've written things, and then 10 years later came back like, oh wow, I just learned something about me that I didn't know about me back then. Is it kind of like the same impulse? Can we say that we inherited that from the higher force of the universe?
Absolutely. I think that one of the meditative states I was in, I saw that every book in the library is just man wanting to know himself ultimately. And he looks at this great universe and tries to define, but in reality, he's trying to make sense out of his own existence, isn't it? So we create, we want to know ourselves. I know myself through, also learn about myself through my content. And I think that this is just one great search of the being seeking to know itself, ultimately.
Right.
So,
Gotcha. Wow. That's interesting. So is it that, and I want to choose my words carefully, is it that Allah is trying to know himself, or that Allah wants others to know him? Because, they say Allah is all knowing.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's kind of a paradoxical question. I apologize.
yeah, no. It's just that I don't, I'm not, I mean, the best way I guess I can answer that is just that, there's this seeking to know, and ultimately, if one goes to the deep level, it is one being, and this being can manifest in so many different forms, in spirit, in in particles that move, and there's this longing to know, this longing to experience itself, and this being ultimately is the one being,
Right.
and we are, you can say, the drops of the rain, right? So we are a fragment of this being. So through knowing ourselves, we will know this being, the ruh, the spirit. Allah blows
Right.
his spirit onto man, as it says in the Quran. So as sparks of this being, we seek also to know ourselves, just as the being seeks to know itself. So you can look at it metaphysically, good and evil. Also, when you create dualities, then you know something by creating pairs. And it's also in the Quran, everything is created in twos, right? It says so in Quran. So when you don't know good if you don't have evil. So through good and evil, you know what is good and you know what is evil. Same with light and darkness. If everything is light, you don't know light, but when you split, like the cell splits into two, then you know what is light and darkness through darkness, just like hot and cold. And
Gotcha.
that's ultimately the same as the master and disciple. So the being wants to know itself. It creates a mirror in the form of the teacher.
Oh wow.
And that the teacher knows itself through the student, and the student knows itself through the teacher.
Gotcha. Wow. So learning is sort of learning is sort of a reflection. You're both learning at the same time, both seeing each other through each other at the same time.
Yeah,
Sort of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, you could say like that. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Now there's a well, there's two things I want to touch on really quickly. Well, one, you said something that kind of caught my attention about when you create one, you create the other. There's a scripture in the Bible in the Old Testament where God says, "I'll create good and I'll create evil." Can the same thing be said of Allah and Sufism that he creates the good and the evil?
Absolutely, absolutely. Shaitan is a creation of Allah. Absolutely, and as contrary to popular belief, a true Muslim does not reject the Bible. It is very clearly said that we, in
Mhm.
the beginning of the Quran, we confirm what has been revealed before. There's an
Mhm.
entire chapter in the Quran dedicated to Maryam, or Virgin Mary. There are
Mhm.
many hadiths about Jesus alayhi salam. Prophet sallam said many things about Isa alayhi salam, and also about Moses. So
Mhm.
so we don't reject hadith. There's tremendous amounts of truth there. Sorry,
Mhm.
in Bible.
Right, right,
It's just that there might be certain things that can be argued to have been added later by
right,
scribes, because
right,
of the process on how the New Testament was compiled after Jesus passed away by the apostles and so on. But the core of the message is there, and it's a very similar message too.
right. Now you mentioned shaitan. What? How do individuals who practice tasawwuf, how do they view shaitan? Is it a literal being, or is it a part of ourselves?
Yeah. So. Uh, Same thing there, and with everything in tasawwuf there are levels, right? So shaitan, uh, you know to the common person who was attention is very much outward. And if I just can draw a very quick parallel to, I think that many people also don't understand the work of Carl Jung, because when he talked about extroversion and introversion, he talked about the direction of energy, and an extrovert is someone who's focused on that, whilst an
Hmm.
introvert has an energy that is inward. The
Right.
attention is inward. So with this extroversion, where you're following, the world, you tend to sort of extrovert shaitan as well. There is
Hmm.
something out there, some evil in other people, right?
Right,
But
right.
the more you turn inward towards yourself, the more you see that you are the shaitan. It's
Wow.
your
Powerful.
the shadow. I think the shadow is one word that
Hmm.
some people wear, because we all have that anger in us. We all have
Right.
jealousy and
Yeah.
pride. That's the side of us that we don't want to see, kind of.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and when we are very much in denial of our own shaitan, we tend to project it very much to other people.
Very true. Very true. Okay, so there's another part that I wanted to touch on because I noticed that you said something in one of your stories, I think, in on Instagram. You were talking about Hinduism, and you said you showed a picture of a temple with all the elephant-headed gods, and you said these
Yeah,
are you
yeah,
said
yeah.
these are jinn, and I wanted to get like a little deeper understanding of that because I know that you draw before anybody gets offended at the comment. I've noticed you draw inspiration and knowledge from everywhere, so you're not necessarily insulting the positive aspects of Hinduism because you mentioned the Vedas, you've mentioned things from Buddhism. So for anybody who's watching this, you might feel like he's trying to insult Hindus. He has a deeper meaning, so I want him to break down a deeper meaning before anybody reacts emotionally. So what did you mean by that when you said that they were?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, because in India you have, like, what is it, 330 million gods,
Something
and
like that.
one of the core of the teachings of the Abrahamic prophets is, starting from Ibrahim alayhi salam, is to remove the idols, or get to the oneness. That there
Hmm.
is the one God. It's many
Hmm.
manifestations of that one God, and you know when spirituality turns dark, and I think that many of these traditions in India, they might have started well. They
Hmm.
might have started from a sincere place with a sincere seeking, but something happened along the way, that passion took over, and lust took over. So
Hmm.
they became distorted, and that is what I think that you can see uh, uh, today with some of these things that happen in India. But what I will say, I think that there is a cosmic law that anyone who really is sincerely seeking is ultimately going to somehow find the truth.
Right.
But that is a sincere seeking. But Well, what happens is that I think that many paths start well, but something happens along the way. And the worldly life, passion, even if you read the Bhagavad Gita and read
Mhm.
the word of Lord Krishna, to stay away from the passions. But somehow passion comes in, and then you start worshiping out of your passion. Because
Mhm.
in Islam, we have this. We don't worship Allah the way we want to worship Allah. We worship Allah the way Allah wants to be worshipped. So we look at this how Allah has revealed it to us. This death of the self and surrender to Allah. That's very central in 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 Islam. And
Mhm.
what you see in some of those cases is kind of the opposite of worshiping Allah the way Allah wants to be worshipped. That's a lot. This is how I project God, and that therefore I will worship this statue because I want God to look like this. So this is why yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So ultimately, what is the error in in seeing the multiplicity of God through the multiplicity of creation? You know, if you feel that there's one God, one essence, one absolute.
Mhm.
What if other people can't understand it that way and can only understand it through the multiplicity? Is that wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see what we are meant to see, right? No, I don't think that it's wrong, and I don't even know that I look at things in terms of like right and wrong. I just
Right.
think that people are, like we say, we are veiled for a reason. I
Hmm.
mean, nobody has ultimate unveiling, even if some people might think that they have. Nobody knows all the hakika. Nobody knows all the realities.
Right.
So only Allah knows all the realities. So we are veiled for a reason, and people, whether they will. This is also what one Sufi Sheikh said, that if you're meant to be in tariqah, it doesn't matter if I'm in the bottom of the ocean. You're gonna find me as your sheikh. So we are meant to do what we
Hmm.
are meant to do. And also the people who are meant to follow the world and do whatever, it's all by the will of Allah. So.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So that brings me kind of smoothly to my next thread of questions.
Mhm,
I've studied a tremendous amount of spiritual knowledge over the years.
mhm.
Over the last probably decade or so, I was introduced to various forms of Western Islam in the Black community. And I would like to know, have you studied any of that? And what are your views on, say, for instance, groups like the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Nation of Islam, the Nation of Gods and Earths? Are you familiar with them in any way?
Absolutely, I am. I am a little bit familiar with the Moors. I was in
Mhm.
contact with African American Sufis. I don't know so much about their teachings, but uh, at least many of the Moorish people I've met seem to be very sort of Sufi,
Mhm.
similar in that sense. When
Right,
it
right,
comes
right,
but I don't know. So I know I have some followers who are into more science.
right.
For me, I'm just very positive to that. When it comes to the Nation of Islam, there was a time where I used to very much follow the teachings of Louis Farrakhan, and I've also read the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, or they say Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
Mhm.
and I must say that this type of Islam, the Nation of Islam teaches, is very, very similar. That was why I studied it for so many years, was because it was the most similar form of Islam that I could find on
Mhm.
YouTube for what I experienced in West Africa. Because
Right.
I have never related to this Wahhabi Salafi type of doctrine, because this is not how I have been brought up,
Mhm.
and not my father either, or so on. So Louis Farrakhan's teachings were very relevant
Mhm.
during that time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And how did you come across the teachings of, like, say, for instance, the Moorish Science Temple of America? How did those teachings end up over where you were?
It was mostly because I was following. I was in contact with an African American Sufi group, and
Okay.
in that group there were many people from the Moorish science side. Uh,
Gotcha.
um, so in this way, I'm not so familiar with their teachings, but
Hmm.
there were many people from these affiliations
Okay.
there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know a lot of what they would call Orthodox Muslims. At
Hmm.
one point in time, there was sort of like a friction between them because they felt like what was being taught over here was kind of straying away from what I guess they would call it a Jahiliyyah. or Jahiliyyah. Am I saying it correctly?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
They-
Jahiliyyah, ignorance. Okay.
yeah, so I know that at one point in time there was a lot of conflict between the Orthodox and those particular orders. But you see those groups as kind of like Sufi orders almost, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In a way, and I feel that that's very sad that people are intolerant in this way, and want to force beliefs that you have to believe like the institutions tell you to believe, because people have the right to be free,
Hmm.
and I just think that so many of these things could have been solved, can be solved by just listening.
Right.
But listening also requires a sincerity that is not always there, because many times it's about power. Actually, it's
Right.
just about
Right.
power and control.
Hmm.
Uh,
Have you ever been in a situation where someone said, "Wait a second, you do tasawwuf. That's not what we do in Islam. You're wrong." Have you ever had that kind of conflict in your personal life?
all the time, like when
Oh,
I
really?
started, yeah, when I started TikTok, which was just like an experiment for me, was a new app. I started teaching tasawwuf there, and somehow in the TikTok algorithm I was, sort of exposed to Sweden, which
Hmm.
is where I was living, and that region is only Wahhabi Salafi. I was trashed every day by
Oh, wow.
hundreds of, I still am by hundreds of Wahhabi and Salafi people.
Hmm.
Certainly, they are very angry and hostile, and so on. So yes, mostly through TikTok, not so much in Instagram. I think the algorithm here is a little bit better. There are more
Yeah.
people who are more spiritually inclined who
Hmm.
get in contact, but particularly in TikTok, when your content is thrown to the masses and they are
Right.
very Salafi dominated, so I get attacked all the time.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what is the core criticism of why they're attacking you? What are they saying that you're doing that's so wrong?
Sufis are grave worshippers, which is not true, because they have this kind of that it's very literalist, because it's based on, I would say, there are four schools of Islamic law, and the Hanbali one is the most orthodox, you can say, and their version is a very 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 extreme version of Hanbali, which kind of says that there is no metaphorical interpretation of the Quran. You have to take it literally. So it's a
Oh, wow.
literalist trend. So when they see a Sufi going to the tomb of a saint, they sort of kind of take it literally. They pray. You should not pray to the saint. You should only pray to God. Like, but nobody is praying to a human being. That's not
Right.
the intention of the practice. And the Shias do something similar, and that's not the intention of it. But they look at it very literally. So grave worship is the main one, and just general insults. Sufis are bidah, meaning they innovate. They have changed the religion.
Hmm.
But that's not true. Actually, their movement is bid'ah, or innovation, because the Sufi way, Islam Iman Ihsan, has existed for 1,300 years.
Yeah.
And the Wahhabi movement is some 200 years old. So their reformist movement, you could say,
Yeah. So
that
the newcomers are saying that you're the newcomer.
exactly. And what's sad to me is that people actually don't know that they are newcomers. We had Sufi tombs all over Palestine, Syria, Somalia, North Africa. Now the Palestinian Sufi tombs, they are all destroyed. In Syria, they are all destroyed.
Oh,
In
wow.
Somalia, the Al-Shabaab have dig up the graves and destroyed them. So, but even Somalis are Sufis from North Africa, Sufis, Palestine Sufis. So it was Sufi Islam that dominated all over, but slowly but surely they took away the spiritual side of Islam and made it
Hmm.
very exoteric. And that is what is Islam to many people today, is Wahhabi or
Hmm.
Salafi Islam.
Wow.
And that's also the answer to one of the questions you asked earlier, why Islam and Sufism are not two different things. Is because Islam very much portrayed today by media is Salafi Islam, and that certainly is different from
Wow.
an Islam that has a lot of spirituality in it.
I had no idea that Sufis were so persecuted.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard a story of a sister from Syria who had Sufi roots. Actually, her brother was preaching Sufi way in Syria. He was put to jail and forced not talk like that. And then when he came out, another type of preaching started from the brother. So yes, death threatened. My teacher told stories in Gambia even now. The Wahhabis and Salafis are starting to spread when they do group zikr, sit and chant together. The Wahhabis came in and cut the power, and there was even a violent confrontation
Wow.
and a court case of that. In some countries, Sufis are killed. They have killed Sufi saints for saying
Wow.
non-dual statements, which is also related to what we talked earlier about these, teachings of Ibn Arabi. I think they executed Ibn Arabi. Someone said that, but at least they executed Al-Halaj, and in a very brutal way, for him saying, "I am the truth." So Sufis are very careful with going out with these teachings because there is so much anger for these inner teachings. So I mean, as a tradition, it has sort of gone underground and tried to live in harmony with people, which is what we do for survival. And then we tone down those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wow. I had no. Wow. That's heartbreaking. I had no idea about any of that stuff. Jeez.
yeah.
Wow. So do you feel like unsafe because you're traveling now? Like you just travel from to Europe. So do you feel like unsafe in the area where you are, or do you feel like it's okay? Like do you feel like it's a
No,
little?
no, I don't feel unsafe. I feel protected by Allah because
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I'm doing from the heart, and I just feel protected by Allah. I don't believe that those people of anger
Mm-hmm.
can do anything. Although I have heard sort of family members being a little bit sort of worried, but no, I don't feel that. But there are those who do. I mean, I guess that if I would have a sort of larger attention, then it would be a different thing. For example, Sheikh Hisham Kabani of the Naqshbandis, he was death threatened by the Wahhabis in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Wow.
think even
Even
some
here
of
in the
them had to
Western
flee
world.
their
Wow.
countries because their Sufi way was Sufism is actually banned in Saudi Arabia. It's
Mm-hmm.
banned in those countries. You cannot wear this. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot do zikr. It's banned. So
Wow. Wow. That's crazy.
yeah,
So let's also take it to because another subject you were talking about. You were talking about the Taliban in Afghanistan. Um,
yeah.
tell me your views on that, and how did that emerge out of quote unquote Islam? Because I don't think it's real Islam, but how did that even come out of Islam?
Yeah, so I just wrote a message to my sheikh about it. He's not responded, at least physically yet, but I will say a little bit what I said there. So when I look at these things, there seems to be like this polarization, right? You have to be for or against, right?
Hmm.
So that's at least when I look at the Muslim Ummah, it's very polarized. Some are very much for, some are very much against. Now, for me, what hurts to me is when I see human beings suffering. I see people running to planes and having this panic. I feel their pain and their desperation. So if I would be any side, I would be on the side which is the best solution for the Afghan people. That would be
Hmm.
sort of the side. Then when it comes to the Taliban, I think it's a multi-pronged. It has many dimensions to it because on the one hand you have this American financing and involvement, but then on the other hand, you have an anger and bitterness that exists in the Muslim community. So there is a kind of silent consent for,
Hmm.
Taliban. There is a silent consent for Hezbollah and Hamas and all of these heavily Wahhabi influenced groups that sort of feel that it is a jihad for them to fight against what they believe is evil. So this is kind of what the people then also supported, and then that is what ultimately came to manifest. So and Allah doesn't change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. So we
Right,
kind
right.
of brought this on us. This is what we wanted. This is what we selected. So that's that side, and then you have I don't know. I look at it and say, what is the will of Allah here? And just trust that Allah knows best why this is happening. Is this a way to reduce Western influence in the region? Is that the intention of Allah? Is it to inflict more pain and trials? I don't know. Ultimately, Allah knows this. But as I said, I can never support a group that rejects the Sufi saints, because rejecting the pious people of Islam, like Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, Imam Jazuli, Sheikh Ahmed Tijani, Sayyid Tuba, etc. That for me is, it says in Hadith, Prophet said, if you show hostility towards the saints, Allah declares war on you. So
Wow.
I can't support anyone who shows hostility to the awliya. On the other hand, I also don't support necessarily Western influence in the region. So
Mhm.
we're just gonna have to see how it turns out, I guess. I'm
Right.
pretty neutral. I think it has many sides.
Wow. I mean, to say that you're neutral could be considered controversial as well.
I guess so, and because we are so polarized, like in this dualism, right? We always have to pick sides, and this is probably the parts of my teachings that are hardest for me to this middle road, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
middle road is a very central. It's central in Buddhism. It is Ma'at in ancient
Hmm.
Egypt. It
Hmm.
is Sirat al-Mustaqim. Actually, when we pray, we say Idina Sirat al-Mustaqim. God show us the straight path. But the straight path in Hadith is the middle road, because Prophet drew 5 lines in the sand. He pointed to the middle line and said, "This is the Sirat al-Mustaqim." Those two extremes are paths of Shaitan. So I'm trying to balance.
Hmm.
It's the same with COVID-19 vaccines. Many spiritual people are very much against vaccines, and so it's kind of polarized. I'm neither, because I think that people have to do the best for their life.
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
um, so in this sense, I'm neutral. And yes, it's controversial because we are so polarized and we are so used to taking political stances on everything.
Hmm.
I just but I'm not neutral in the way that I wish whatever is best for the Afghan people,
Right. Right.
whatever reduces suffering, that I am pro.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Oh man, that's a tough conversation to have.
Mhm.
So yeah, so now let me just ask you. There's so much spirituality, and you just delivered a whole bucket of spiritual knowledge, and I appreciate your time.
So,
For individuals out there who want practical, concrete, solid answers, in what possible way could this spirituality help people through these times?
yeah, I mean, certainly, because in this COVID time, 19 time, we sort of, again, we ask what's the will of Allah, because Allah is the one, God is ultimately the one who create this virus and create the cure, and know why
Hmm.
Allah choose to manifest as Al-Mumit, the death bringer, because Allah has many names, right? And one of them is death bringer. So Allah gives life, Allah takes life as well.
Hmm.
So why did Allah manifest as this death bringer that wreaks death on the world? Well, one thing that has happened, one consequence, is that many people have spent time with themselves. We have turned inward, and we have almost been forced to meditate in that sense.
Hmm. Yep.
So I do certainly see COVID as a kind of indicator of, maybe we'll see, but maybe a spiritual time that we are going to turn more inward. And
Hmm.
right now in the world, many people are suffering, and many people are turning to different sorts of spirituality. We see young people, very young people, like teenagers, talking about astral projection and knowing
Hmm.
yourself. That didn't
Hmm.
happen when I was a teenager. So we
Right.
see a growth in spirituality uh, uh, everywhere, and it has tremendous healing power, because uh, when you start being aware of yourself, you get, I wouldn't say that you can change the outcome of things, because it's all in the hands of Allah, but you become aware of what you manifest. So when you get angry, you become aware of your anger rather than being unconscious of your anger. So you be conscious of why things happen. So how spirituality then through, for example, meditation can help you. You suffer, you're depressed, you can go into why, what's the cause of that, what has caused this, rather than being very unaware and therefore panicking from
Hmm.
it. So it has
Hmm.
tremendous healing power just from the awareness itself.
Right, right, right. True. Very, very, very true. And now, you just mentioned the kids talking about astral projection. I know in certain spiritual orders, the rules say that you can't talk about your meditation experiences. But have you ever had any strange meditation experiences that you could share with us, or any astral projection experiences you could share with us?
Oh yeah, certainly, certainly, certainly. I mean, uh, so my meditations, I try to intend them like a little bit like that. I don't want anything. So just Allah guide, the way I guide, and the benchmark is the awareness on the breath.
Hmm.
But last time I meditated, it was just a couple of hours ago. What happened? Yeah, because I dreamt a dream, right? I dreamt a dream that I missed a certain bus with number 536. I don't know this number yet, what it means, but I missed the bus. And then I wondered after the dream, it was many months ago, was it a bus to, a sort of promised land, or was it a bus to hellfire, like a bus to a really dark place? And then the first interpretation of this dream was that, no, I missed it because I wasn't supposed to be it. It was a bad bus. But then now that I meditated, I saw the bus again. I've not seen it for many, many, many months. I went into it. I saw not many people there. And then we traveled to, you can say, a little bit of a celestial type of plane with mountains, you know,
Well, that's
green
interesting.
fields. And it
Hmm.
was said to me also, not many people come here. Like
Wow.
with people from different traditions, but not many people
Hmm.
uh, are on this bus, because many
Hmm.
were on the other buses that were going all over the place. So this is one quite mystical
Yeah,
one that I saw in meditation now. Uh,
gotcha. Were you on this path since you were a child? Because I know
uh,
as a kid, me growing up, I had all kinds of weird spiritual experiences. Like for instance, when I was young, before I started meditating or anything, I had a dream in which there were two angels,
mhm,
and they had like some weird things coming out of their back, and
mhm,
they were talking to me. They were talking to me about the power of words, how words can shift time because there's so much power, and the words have such a powerful gravitational pull. And at the time, I couldn't even understand it. And then
mhm.
finally, right before I woke up, I asked the angels, "Why do your wings look like that?" And one of the angels said, "They're not wings. They attract energy, so I can make the transdimensional jump to heaven." And he said, "Just like your hair." And then I woke up, and this is a dream I had when I think I was probably maybe I was a teenager, I think, when I had this dream. So
Uh,
do you feel like you were that kind of like mystic, born mystic since you were young, or did you discover this path?
yes, the honest answer is yes, I was. Um, my grandmother, who is from Finland, was a very devout Christian.
Hmm.
So when I was a kid, I was a young age, my grandmother always used to take me to church, and she used to read the Bible to me, and I used to talk about God in kindergarten. And then I even heard stories of my parents that the teachers were complaining because I was talking about God, and it was a secular country and people were
Right.
uncomfortable. So yes, I had that side in me early, but because I grew up in Sweden, right? It's a secular country. It has Christian roots, and my Finnish family was Christian. So more from a, you can say, Christian point of view.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, but yes, it was there. It was not so much there, but um, yeah, but it was there. And then I went to choir school also for 9 years, and when we did choir, we sang in most churches in Stockholm. So yes, there has been a component of it, but the real searching maybe started, the real pull, when I was 19. Yeah, that's now 14 years ago. When I from high school, after high school, So then I started looking for my roots, and that was also when I started listening to Louis Farrakhan and traveling a lot to West Africa, and that's
Right.
also when I started praying, this Islamically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
although I'm, I guess technically I'm born Muslim father, born with a Muslim name and so on, but I didn't pray until I was like 20.
Oh wow. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Wow.
it has been there in a little bit here and there, but traces of it. I
Right.
can say
Right.
that.
Same, yeah, same thing with me. I was raised in a Christian household, um, Pentecostal mom, Pentecostal dad, mostly Pentecostal Baptist background. But I would have these kind of like strange mystical experiences. I remember when I first read about meditation, I was probably like 9. No, I was probably about 11. And I said, oh, let me try this. I was reading a fantasy book by one of my favorite authors at the time. He wrote kid fantasy novels. His name was Lloyd Alexander. And one of his characters was a weirdo who meditated, right?
Hmm.
So I tried it. And I remember I had to stop doing it because I would get into such deep meditation trances that I would kind of like just black out for hours. Like I would literally sit there and then wake up and 2 hours had gone by. I had no idea what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
So it just kind of immediately just it just felt at home for me. But I had to stop doing it because I remember I would start blacking out. So I would be at school doing a test, and they said you got 1 hour for a test, and I would just black out and go into a trance for an hour. So because at the time, unfortunately, I felt that school was more important than meditation, I had to stop meditating to focus on school. I wish I'd have known better back then, but
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
see. Yeah, no, certainly. I remember when I was 16, I think when we studied religion in school, religion was my favorite subject. And
Hmm.
particularly the story of Buddha really, really
Hmm.
struck me. Really,
Me too.
really.
Yep.
That was my favorite story, when a
Yep.
prince who left everything and wanted to find truth. It really resonated with me. I really like that story. So yeah, I mean, traces of it has always similar to your, it has been there.
Wow. So where do you feel like this spiritual journey will take you? Say within the next 5 years, 10 years.
Oh, if I knew the answer to that question, no, I don't know. I mean, now I'm doing an interview. That's like the first time I'm ever interviewed in my life. So alhamdulillah, Allah is guiding us graciously. Uh, I don't know. It's in the hands of Allah, but
Hmm.
hopefully, I mean, there are many spiritual people out there from different, different backgrounds and so on. And for me, dominantly spiritual, even if I sort of do economics and banking and so on, that's not really what pulls me is the spirituality. So continue to do spirituality, hopefully maybe meet more people,
Hmm.
um, and so on.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, there's one thing I have to do. Give me one quick second.
Yes.
I've been trying to wait for the right moment to do this, but I figured I'll do it now. I wrote a book. I
Okay.
wrote a kids book to teach kids meditation,
Alhamdulillah.
mindfulness and meditation. Yeah, kids 8 to 12. I wrote it for all kids 8 to 12, but I wrote it specifically for kids who might have like issues with trying to regulate themselves. Um, I used to work at a school, so a lot of those kids were very smart kids, but because it was a school in the city, there was a lot of trauma. There's a lot of kids with undiagnosed issues. So I would meditate with them, and it helped them to calm down. So I decided to write a short book, helpful book. It's called Easy: A Guide to Mindfulness and Meditation, kids 8 to 12. So that's the path I'm taking now. I'm trying to really get this book in as many hands of children who need it. Because I know there's a lot of kids out there, especially during quarantine, who are experiencing loneliness and can't control themselves and don't understand why. They're losing their temper and feeling depressed. So, meditation saved my life. So if I could
Alhamdulillah.
spread that positive vibe around the world, then I feel happy like I did something with my life.
Yeah, I'm just very happy. I just want to make a shout out, because meditation techniques are really needed right now. Many people are asking how to meditate, and so as the more methods we can get out there. I'm also planning to maybe in the future write some Sufi meditation techniques, but we really need to get out the technique to people so they can practice it and heal. So
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me start wrapping up. Thank you so much for your time. I really
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it,
you.
brother. This is a fun build. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on my IGTV so you can see it later on, and I'm also gonna throw it up on my YouTube. And I'm gonna put it up on my Facebook too.
Okay, okay.
All right,
That's very
salute,
good.
man.
Okay,
Appreciate the
take care.
conversation. Appreciate the time. Yeah, have a
Thank
good
you
day.
for having me.
No
Okay.
doubt, man. Peace.
Assalamu alaikum.